But I want you to think about what's happened in the public school system. Do you remember, or any of you all old enough to remember, when boys went to shop class? You know, they had energy, and it was a way for them to get rid of that extra energy without going to a Ritalin bottle or something like that. But something strange happened since the 70s to now.
When young girls and boys go to school, they're asked to sit in place and listen to lectures. And they do this 5 days a week, 7 hours a day, with short breaks for lunch and gym. And many of these young kids, especially boys, are so filled with energy that this schedule makes them want to bounce off the walls. So how does the school respond to that? It claims that many of them suffer from something called hyperactivity and puts them on pills. Because rather than say there's something wrong with the system, they decided there's something wrong with the children. The problem can never be the system. They'll say the funding's a problem, they'll say the pay is a problem, they'll say the curriculum's a problem, but it is never the system. So rather than address the system, they chemically lobotomize young boys to their chair, have them sit in place, memorize, and repeat, and they don't even let them do wood shop anymore. And then they give out participation trophies and teach young boys that their desire to compete is wrong and their desire to roughhouse is wrong. And the entire activity, the entire school system is structurally designed to suppress the masculine instinct in boys. And in my opinion, a hyper child should be given time to run, to roughhouse. They should be in jujitsu, playing team sports, being physical, competing. They should be encouraged to do work with their hands, doing carpentry, making tree swings and things out of wood. And even their academic lessons should be made active.
The number of school psychologists increased. In 1970 it was 5,000. Today it's 57,000. You need to ask why. Why did that number increase so much? Psychiatry and psychology were marshaled to rewrite the textbooks to create the new proletariat, which would, in the new world, they aggressively hope to create the form that we see today.
Every school in America used to have a room that smelled like sawdust and machine oil. A room where kids built things with their own hands. Real things they carried home and kept for 50 years. That room is gone now. Most kids today have never heard of it. And how we lost it says everything about what went wrong. You remember that hallway, right? The one that led to the back of the school where the air smelled different. You could hear the buzz of a saw before you even got close to the door. And once you walked in, it hit you all at once. Wood shavings scattered across the floor. Metal filings near the grinder. The hum of machines that sounded like they meant business. That was shop class. And if you grew up in the 1950s or 1960s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The teacher was usually a big guy with rough hands and a voice that carried across the whole room without him even trying. Half the time he had a pencil tucked behind his ear and sawdust stuck to his shirt. A lot of these men were veterans, World War II guys, Korea guys. They came home, learned a trade, raised a family, and ended up teaching other people's kids how to work with wood and metal. They did not do it for the money. They did it because somebody once taught them the same way, and they believed it was worth passing on. He did not teach from a book. He walked right over to the workbench, picked up a piece of raw lumber, and showed you how it was done. Then he handed you the tool and said, "Your turn." That was the whole method. Watch me. Now you try. And if you messed it up, he did not yell at you or make you feel small. He just showed you again. Patient as anything. Because guys like that understood something about teaching that a whole lot of people have since forgotten. You learn by doing, not by reading about doing, not by watching somebody else do it on a screen, by picking up the tool with your own hands and doing the work yourself. And for a lot of kids, that room at the back of the school was the only place in the entire building where they felt like they actually belonged. Think about that for a second. You had the kid who could not sit still during English, the one who stared out the window all through math class. Teachers called him a troublemaker, said he did not apply himself. sent notes home to his parents every other week saying he needed to try harder. But you put that same kid in front of a lathe, and something changed behind his eyes. He locked in. He got quiet. He focused. He built something with care and attention that none of his other teachers ever got to see. And for the first time all day, somebody looked at him and said, "Good job, son." Shop class saved kids like that. It gave them a reason to keep showing up to school every morning when everything else in that building made them want to walk out the door and never come back. And the things you made in there stayed with you forever. Not just the skills, the actual objects. Your dad probably still has that cutting board you made in 7th grade, sitting in a kitchen drawer somewhere. By the late 1960s and all through the 1970s, shop class was everywhere. Almost every school in the country had at least one program running. A lot of them had 2 or 3. Woodworking in one room, metal shop right down the hall, auto shop out in a separate building near the parking lot with a big garage door, and a car up on a lift with the hood open and parts spread across the floor. And here is what people seem to forget about those days. Nobody looked down on shop class, not one bit. A kid who could weld a clean bead or cut a straight joint got the same respect as the kid pulling straight A's in history. Because back then, the world understood something simple. You need somebody to design the bridge, and you need somebody to build it. One was not better than the other. Both were necessary. Both mattered. The guys who came out of those programs went on to build this country with their bare hands. They framed the houses. They ran the electrical wire through the walls. They fixed the plumbing when the pipes froze in January. They kept the family cars running on Saturday mornings with a wrench and a cup of coffee. They welded steel beams that held up buildings and bridges and factories. Every single neighborhood in America was held together by men who picked up their very first tool in a room that smelled like sawdust and hard work. The generation that grew up with shop class, they built their own shelves on a Sunday afternoon, fixed their own cars without a mechanic, patched their own roofs after a bad storm tore the shingles loose, rewired a busted light switch before dinner without thinking twice. When the kitchen faucet started dripping at midnight, they grabbed a wrench and took care of it before breakfast. When the back porch steps started sagging, they bought some lumber and fixed them that same weekend. They never panicked when something broke because a man with calloused hands taught them 40 years ago that most problems in this life can be fixed with the right tool and a little patience.
I think that we need to get back to the way we were in the past, where we respect both young women and young men and let them function in their strengths and gear the educational system to both of them. Rather than medicate people to compliance, I think that you need to do things like they did in the past. Give men a chance to build things in a shop class. Meet each of the students on their own ground according to their own gender, like they did in the past. Back when I was young, they never medicated anybody. You went to the principal's office and you got disciplined by the principal, but they didn't medicate you. That is something that's come into the system, this public school system, in, I say, the past 40 years or so. I hope we'll get back to where we used to be.